Hi, everyone out there in the world of YouTube or wherever it is you're checking out this video. Thanks for stopping by. And if you just happen to come across a clip or a snippet, you should definitely go find the full interview because you will not be disappointed. This interview is going to be fantastic. He is the father of a previous guest, Miss Adrienne Davis. So you should definitely go see her video, watch the entire thing, and a clip or a link of it should be coming across the screen right about now, so go check out Adrienne's video. But this is her father, Mr. Ron Davis, who has agreed to sit down with us today and share his experience, wealth of knowledge and wisdom, because as Adrienne mentioned in her video, he has a blueprint and he's a certified public accountant. So I definitely needed to hear from him, and I'm glad he accepted the invitation. Before I go any further, my name is Jacqueline Anderson, and I will kick off this interview as I do every interview with the exact same question. Sir, what is your name as printed on your birth certificate?
My name is Ronald O'Neill Davis.
Great. And
Jacqueline, I would just like to say I think you're offering a great service to young aspiring accountants to become CPAs. So I wanted to tip my hat to you for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And if you know anyone else who would be willing to sit down with us, we definitely would like to document their experience because, as you know, we're underrepresented, and it doesn't seem like the needle has moved in the last 50 years in accounting, especially with the CPA designation. We're still around 1%, and representing only 5,000 out of 650,000 CPAs in the United States. So we definitely want to increase that number.
And we should.
All right. And so where are you from, Mr. Davis?
I'm from a small town called Petersburg, Virginia. Petersburg, Virginia is about 25 miles south of Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of Virginia. That's where I was born and raised.
Gotcha. Okay, so where are you currently living?
I live in Fort Washington, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C.
Gotcha. Do you mind sharing your current age?
I'm 58 years old.
No! Okay. And like I said, he has 2 adult children. One, you can check out Adrienne's video. You're looking good for the nice looking young man.
Well, thank you. You're so kind.
Yeah. So do you remember what age were you certified?
I was certified in 1990. I was 29 at the time when I passed my certification. So it was quite an experience. It probably took 3 to 4 years for me to complete all of my requirements to pass the CPA exam, and it was the most challenging endeavor that I've ever taken on. I
agree. I concur with that. Along with mine is close, right there running neck and neck is giving birth. They're right there together for me.
Well, I don't know about giving birth, but you know, I've been in labor a couple of times with my kids. So when my wife was squeezing my hand, I kind of felt how difficult it was. So I didn't experience it myself, but she transferred the pain.
Well, let me tell you, they rank up there together, in my opinion. So what is your state issued license number?
My state issue license number is 14564.
Right, and that was in the state of Virginia, right?
And that's in the state of Virginia. That's correct.
Right. So you did not venture far from home.
I did not. You know, I was born and raised in Petersburg, as I indicated, and I decided that I wanted to leave Petersburg, which is a small town, to move to Washington, D.C. So I moved to Washington, D.C. to attend Howard University, and I went to Howard sight unseen. When I first arrived at Howard, it was my first day ever visiting the school, and even, you know, it was a little funny because as my best friend and I, you know, traveled to find Howard, we passed by it at least 3 times before we realized exactly where it was because it's tucked into the middle of the city.
Gotcha. Okay. Did he attend Howard as well?
Yes, he did.
Gotcha. Okay. What was your major? Your undergrad degree in?
My major was accounting.
Okay.
And you know, my backstory when I was in high school, I had to take an elective, and I took an accounting class as an elective. And accounting came, well, beginning accounting or principles of accounting came easy to me. And I said, and my instructor indicated that accountants make a lot of money. So
Okay.
that really piqued my interest in accounting. My other thoughts is I had some desire to become an attorney, but once I took the accounting course, I really did enjoy accounting a lot. And I decided to major in accounting once I entered into Howard.
Once you started, but what did you have in mind? What field or career did you have in mind before you out of high school?
I thought I wanted to be an attorney,
So,
but I'm glad that I chose the accounting profession.
gotcha. Okay. Do you have any other degrees?
No, no. And, I graduated from Howard in 1985. And, during that period of time, even though MBAs were important, but if you received your CPA, the MBA was not as important, at that time. But I think now, in the current climate, that it's important to have your CPA as well as your MBA. Yeah, and because they also changed the hours requirement to sit for the CPA exam, so you need to pick up those additional hours, and you might as well pick up your MBA, in the process as well.
Yeah, this day and time, it may as well get your master's degree because you have the equivalent number of hours.
That's right. That's right.
Gotcha. Well, I'll definitely ask you about your exam experience and how many hours you needed at that time. So right now, do you currently work? And if you do, is it in industry, government, public accounting? Are you entrepreneur? Are you branched out and started doing teaching?
I guess I can describe myself as maybe semi-retired.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I do consulting work for small businesses. Also, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I evaluate different business deals to determine whether it's something that I may get involved in.
Gotcha. Can you give us a little bit of your background when you were working? What
Yeah.
you did, or some areas of
I started working in the retail sector of accounting. Everyone is probably too young to remember a video chain called Earl's Video, but Earl's Video actually preceded Blockbuster's Video. Blockbuster actually purchased Earl's. At the time, in the mid 80s to late 80s, Earl's was the largest video chain in the country. And I started working at Earl's as a junior accountant. I worked there for about 3 years, and one of the things, and I'll just share some of my experiences, but as an African American working in corporate America, it was difficult for me to get meaningful assignments. I had a counterpart, a white gentleman who seemed to get all of the good assignments, and my assignments were not as purposeful or meaningful, to the organization. Even though I really tried hard to complete all of my assignments as quickly as I could and accurately as I could so that I can ask for more work, I never seemed to get, the same level of work that my counterpart received. And after being there for 3 years, and I did receive a promotion from junior accountant to fixed assets supervisor, I moved into the healthcare sector. And healthcare is the arena that I spent about 30 years, of my professional life, working in. I started as a senior accountant at one of the major hospitals here in the DC area, which was Fairfax Hospital. As working as a senior accountant, I was able to grow, and I was able to receive a promotion to accounting manager. One of the challenges working in such a large organization is that you don't always get the opportunity to see the big picture. The general ledger accounting department was different from the budgeting department, which was different from the accounts receivable department. And so you had all of these different departments, but you didn't have the opportunity to get the experience in the different areas. So after spending 5 years there, I decided to accept a position as a controller at a smaller hospital. And which my goal there was to work for a hospital where I could get hands-on experience with all of the other different areas that I could not experience at a larger institution. And, just to share a little bit more information, particularly I like for young people to know that when you get an opportunity, you really have to take the most advantage of it as you can. And so what happened after being at this particular hospital for a couple of months, the chief financial officer left the organization to start a new business. It was a sister business to our organization, but he left. And so that created an opportunity for me, but the opportunity did not come right away. So while they were recruiting and looking to replace the CFO, that gave me an opportunity to hone my skills, to learn the business, and after, I would say about 8 or 9 months, I was doing the job, and the CEO recognized me as doing the job and say, hey, you're doing the job, let's name you Chief Financial Officer, and that's how I got my break. And one of the things that I would like to offer as well is that if you don't know the answer to a question, please let me get back to you on that. Do not give an incorrect answer that people know that is wrong or that you have to go back and correct. So it's better to say, let me get back with you on that answer, do the research, and present the correct answer at a future date. I can't tell you how many long nights I'd had just doing the research from a question that came up during the course of the day, that I had to make sure that I knew exactly the subject matter and I was able to talk intelligently when the subject came up again.
Gotcha. So we shouldn't feel pressured on the spot to have an intelligent answer or feel well-versed on everything under the sun that has to do with
No, it's better to say, let me get back with you and get the correct answer, because it's nothing worse than saying something and then you find out the information that you provided was wrong. Right. And then you have to go and correct, say, well, I wasn't quite right. So from that experience, and I'll continue. So from working at a smaller hospital, that allowed me to hone my skills, to learn all of the different areas that I couldn't learn previously, and I was able to move back into a larger hospital system. And I started in that particular system as a controller, running the operations for one hospital. And the healthcare company that I was working for purchased another hospital, so I became the controller for both organizations. So, and as another note, we always have to work a lot harder and a lot stronger than our counterparts. And I had a CFO, and I'm just going to be frank, he was lazy. The CFO was lazy. Okay. During the course of the day, he would ask me to do all of these different things, basically doing this work. And then at the end of the day, I had to spend my evenings doing my work, to make sure that my work was done, appropriately. And sometimes you don't know whether or not people notice that you are the one that's doing the work, you're the one that had the answers. But what occurred is that they finally decided that, you know what, Ron, you're the one doing the work. We're going to fire the CFO and name you CFO.
Well, what a break that was.
It was a tremendous break. It was a tremendous break. So, hard work does not go unrewarded. And it's so important to really learn the industry that you're working in, make sure you just don't understand the numbers, but you understand the business as well, so that you can apply the numbers to the business, and that helps make good financial decisions.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, before we go too far along, you mentioned when you were working at the smaller hospital and
Yes.
someone had left, or there was an 8-month, 9-month interim period.
Yes.
And there was an opportunity that presented itself. I would like to know, during that time, did you get promoted, or did your salary increase, or you just took the opportunity to hone your skills, put your head down, and just know down the road it would pay off? Because nowadays, if you're not coming with the coins, as they say, the dollars, we decline that offer. I'm not working for free, is the mindset.
Well, and you know, this is a different day and time that I'm trying to adjust to. But at the time, I did not get an increase. There was no promise that I would get a promotion. So I was just working just on sheer effort. And I really was surprised when the position was offered to me. But I knew that I was doing the work, and I was putting my best foot forward to make myself, you know, eligible for the position. And
Well, that's what I wanted to emphasize, that I asked you to speak on that, about not having a reward or return immediately.
Yeah, and some you have to play the long game. You really have to play the long game, and I know that's a little different now, but I played the long game, and I just felt that it would benefit me in the long run. And so one of my you know, favorite sayings, that anyone that you talk to, anything that you learn, no one can take away from you.
True.
You know, so it's so important to, you want to learn, you want to be at the table, you want to gain the knowledge. And once you have that knowledge, you will always have the knowledge, and no one would ever be able to take that knowledge away from you.
Exactly. But I know you were going on to talk about the next position you had, so I want to circle back to that so you can pick up with that story.
Sure. Okay. So when I went to work with the healthcare organization, I spent probably about 10 years working within that organization. As I mentioned, I was promoted from controller to chief financial officer. And once I left the organization, and this was in 2009, which wasn't the best time, you know, to try to start a business, but a good friend of mine and I, you know, we was trying to establish a meat processing plant, and it was very difficult to try to find financing, you know, during that period of time because the economy dropped significantly. So, you know, we spent about 6 months, you know, calling on banks, you know, trying to raise the capital to start the business. And just so happened, and this is another thing, you know, I like to let everyone know, never burn your bridges, you know, because you'll never know who you will work with again in the future. So during that period of time, you know, while we were trying to get the venture off the ground, someone that I work with at the hospital system was pursuing an opportunity actually in Memphis, Tennessee. And he called and he said, "Hey, Ron, I'm pursuing the CEO position in Memphis, and they need an interim CFO. Are you interested in taking advantage of, you know, this interim position?"
Okay.
So at the time, I had been home for 6 months, and I think my wife was probably a little tired of seeing me home all the time, you know. I think in her mind, I was probably watching too much Sports Center, but she didn't really realize or appreciate all the work I was putting into trying to create this new business opportunity. But, and that's why I said you never know who you will work for again. And so when he asked me to take the interim position, I said, okay, I'll do it. And in my mind, I was only planning to do the position for probably about 3 months to 6 months at the most. Once I got there, and you know, my partner and I, we were able to get the venture off the ground, but the meat processing plant was actually located in Wells, Minnesota, and and so I visited Minnesota in the summer, and I made the decision that Minnesota was not a place that I really wanted to be. And I decided to stay in Memphis and continue with that opportunity. So I ended up working in Memphis for a little over 9 years.
Did you?
Yes, yes. And
virtual remote.
Well,
back then.
Well, it wasn't virtual, you know, so I guess you could say I had dual residency. You know, I had an apartment in Memphis, you know, and I would travel back to Maryland normally every other weekend. You know, unless something was going on, I would travel back a little more frequently every weekend. So you know, again, you know, the CEO, you know, we had worked together before, but we did not work together closely. And I did not know that he noticed or valued my work in a manner in which he did. And
go for itself.
And so it was kind of refreshing, you know, when he asked, you know, if I was interested in being the CFO, because once he obtained the position as CEO, he really wanted me to stay, even though in my mind I was planning, you know, I was going to go to Minnesota until I actually visited Minnesota.
Right, that speaks to building relationships, staying in contact, making connections, and having a good work ethic.
And that's why it's so important.
Right. Doors will open up for you down the road unexpectedly.
That's true. That's so true.
Okay, well, let's rewind and go back to when you got certified or started with studying to be certified, and how you ended up on that journey and how long the journey was, who told you all about being CPA and how much money you can make back then and what it translates to now. So we'll go back to that. So what review course was on the market back then? What did you choose? Why? What was the price, reputation, or was it convenient, or offer this coursework through Howard back then?
Okay, let me first start off by saying that I did not have great study habits, you know, so I did not develop great study habits in high school or in college. And it certainly made, you know, sitting for the CPA exam, you know, very challenging. They did have Becker, you know, and you said back in the day, but but at the time I took a review course from the local community college. I can't remember the name of the course at this time, but the course held classes every Saturday. You know, it's pretty much from 9 to 5 every Saturday. So it really made for, you know, very long days. And then there was review sessions once a week, you know, during the course of the week. So when I sat for the first time, and now, if you can remember, it was 4 parts, you know, again, back in the day. So I passed the practice part, you know, my first time around.
Okay.
But what I did not do is that I did not pass theory along with practice. And the reason why that was problematic, because I had to do all of the work associated with practice, you know, just to study for theory to make sure that I had the knowledge there. So I did not pass theory, I did not pass auditing, and I did not pass business law. And at the time, I felt that auditing and business law was the most challenging because I really couldn't put it into context. And professionally, once I went through a couple of audits, you know, that's when auditing started to click a little bit better for me. And business law, it just took a lot of repetitive reading and really, you know, understanding the jargon, you know, related to business law.
So at that time, although it's still 4 sections, back then the sections were, you said, business law, auditing, theory, and practice? And
practice, yes. Yeah, so practice was doing problems, you know, and theory was more multiple choice question, just answering, the theoretical application to the different accounting methods.
And it was pencil and paper, right?
It was pencil and paper, yes. Yes. You had to have your sharpened pencils, and it was pretty intense.
Was it timed back then?
It was timed, yes. Yes, yes. The first section was a half day. Then you had a full day, and then there was another half day. So about 2 days in total.
Gotcha. And where were the testing centers or options? Did you have many, or was that a challenge as well?
At the time, I was living in Virginia, so I was able to, and I tested mostly in Richmond, Virginia, and I also tested in Norfolk, Virginia as well. So those were the 2 sites that I tested in.
And if I remember correctly, when we first started talking, you said it took between 3 to 4 years?
It did. And it's really a time commitment. And like I said, I didn't have the greatest study habits, but it really takes a lot of discipline, and you really have to spend all of your waking moments doing some form of studying, if you were not working. And that's what it really took. In the mornings, grab the book, review information, prior to going into the office. During your lunch break, review some more information, and then you have to put the time in the evenings. But I think most importantly is it's great to set a study session. And I know in your conversation with Adrian, she talked about once she finally accomplished passing the exam, the conversation that I had with her was, don't try to study for 5 hours right off the bat. I said, take it in small doses. I said, start, maybe with an hour to 2 hours of studying, then go back, try to increase the amount of time that you're studying, because if you're going to sit down for 4 or 5 hours, it's going to be so overwhelming is that you're going to become more frustrated than really allowing, the information to sink in. So, my point, establish a study habit, set times of days or in the evenings that you want to study, but start off small. And, don't jump in and say, I'm going to study for 4 or 5 hours, because it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, information overload.
That's correct. That's correct.
So many distractions. It seems like as soon as you dedicate time or set aside time, out of the blue, everything pops up, right?
Well, let me say this. We're just different. And again, we didn't have cell phones. So we did not have, any devices to sit near us that could distract us from studying, And I think that's probably one of the things that, if you really want to get a good study session in, turn off your electronic devices and really just concentrate on studying and not allow yourself to be interrupted.
Gotcha. What was your approach at the time? By yourself, just in a room locked in, or did you find some comfort and a support system with a group of people?
I guess I never really studied well with others, so it was really, finding, time to study alone. And unfortunately, I have a very supportive wife, that took on additional responsibilities and really allowed me to spend the time that I needed to study, for the exam. And once I really buckled down, that's when I started to pass the parts, because I think a lot of us, we kind of fool ourselves and we say, I know that, I studied for it. And another thing that I always say, be honest with yourself, no matter what the circumstances are, do some self-reflection and just be honest with yourself. And whether or not you gave it your all, and whether or not you want to communicate that to others. As long as you know that within, then you know whether or not you put in the amount of time and commitment that was necessary to be successful.
Well, I know you talked about your study habits and having to buckle down, but during that 3 to 4 year process, were there any unexpected life occurrences, anything out the blue, knock you off track that you just cannot plan for?
Fortunately, that didn't happen, you know. So again, I passed the exam in October of 1990, and we found out in January of 1991 that my wife was pregnant with Adrian. So fortunately, that life event, you know, occurred after I successfully passed the exam.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good too. Get it out of the way early before you have other commitments, family, life.
That's so important. And that's one thing I do say, get it out early, do it early.
Gotcha. So well, I keep saying back then, but if you remember, what was the price an issue? Was that a sacrifice? Was it covered with some employer? Well, the testing fees and the review course.
It was not covered. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the review course, I believe it was $500, but you know, $500. I know, but that was a lot of money in the 80s. In the late 80s, that was a lot. That was a lot of money back then.
That's the cost of the section of the exam almost nowadays. I think I know it's around $250, but I'm exaggerating. But that's almost
yeah.
The test.
Compared to Becker for $5,000, you're right. You know, it's not a large amount, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't take Becker. You know, I found a cheaper option, and I felt that it was a good option for me. And really, you just have to do as many problems as you can. That's the only way that you're going to prepare. You know, either do all of the even problems or do all of the odd problems, and just try to do as many problems as you can, just to become more familiar.
I don't think we touched on it, but if we did, just remind me and anybody who's watching, when you were majoring in accounting, did you know you wanted to be a CPA? Once you got started in class, pursuing your undergrad, did you know CPA was the end goal?
Actually not. So I'm glad that you asked that question. When I first started my career, and I would tell people that I was an accountant, the next response would always be, are you a CPA?
You're right. Okay, keep on. Okay, definitely tell us.
So it's almost as if you didn't get the respect in the profession unless you were a CPA. So that was a driving, you know, motivation, you know, because also, again, the white counterpart that I mentioned, he had a CPA, and I saw the opportunities that he was receiving in the organization. And I really wanted to get those same opportunities. And the importance of having a CPA is when someone looks at your resume and they see CPA, you're always going to get a harder look. You know, if you don't have it, it's easy for a company just to put your resume in a separate pile. But when you're a CPA, and also when you're an African American CPA, it makes a big difference. And you know, one of the things to note is some organizations, they look for African American talent, and if you have your CPA, that gets your foot in the door. But once you have your foot in the door, you still have to perform. You know, so it doesn't end there, but it certainly opened the door and give you opportunities, and not only in the corporate world, but also when you're dealing with banks, when you're looking at potential entrepreneurial deals. When you present your credentials as a CPA, you're going to be viewed differently, because they're going to feel that you understand how business works, and you're not just someone with a great idea or, you know, a fly-by-night idea.
Well, when you started on that journey, you talk about the friend and counterpart you had at the time. Did y'all have conversations about that, or did you just see that he was a CPA and was like, that's something I probably should pursue?
Never had conversations about it because I think that probably came about once I started in the profession. I didn't give it a lot of thought prior to becoming an accountant.
All right, you just took it upon yourself, saying, I want to go to.
Yes, because I wanted to be able to answer that question. Yes, when I said I was an accountant and they asked, "Are you a CPA?" I wanted to answer that question. Yes, I am.
That's what motivated you, got you started.
That was motivation as well.
Well, growing up and before getting to college, did you know anything about being a CPA, certified public accountant? Did you even know anybody in your family or neighborhood?
Well, actually, it's funny that you mention that because I actually have 3 first cousins who are CPAs.
Are you about to blow my mind? You see I'm going to the camera like, really?
Yes, unfortunately, one of my cousins, he passed away, and he passed away pretty young. But but even at the time,
it's highly unusual, I must say.
Yes. So my oldest cousin, he's probably he's about 14 years older than I am. So I really didn't understand the profession or what he did, even when I was in high school. And my other cousins, they were a little closer into age, and they became accounting majors and CPAs, closer to myself. Now, while you mentioned in high school, so coming from a small town, Petersburg was really a manufacturing town. So most of the successful people in Petersburg worked at manufacturing plants. The professionals were teachers or principals. So I had never experienced an accountant, and I really didn't know what an accountant was and what an accountant really did, until I took the course myself.
Gotcha. Well, over your career and taking various positions, and once you became a CPA, did you see your salary automatically increase? Was it a substantial increase?
When I first passed the CPA, it was a small increase, for acknowledgement of me passing the CPA exam. But the next job opportunity that I received, I got a significant increase, which back then was, it was quite a bit of money. And I would just say it was $50,000, and I was so elated.
And what year, do you remember around, just so we can get a gauge, an idea?
And so that was probably, let's say, 1994, maybe around 1994. So at the time, that was
a lot of money. That was
a lot of money, and I was very elated and excited, about that compensation.
Right, so you felt
So keep in mind, when I started, my starting salary was $15,000. So when I started as a junior accountant, my compensation was $15,000. So
it's a big difference. So what, almost 30 years later, once you retired, did you feel at the time, once you retired, that your compensation was in line with industry standards, that it had increased significantly along with your experience?
Yes, I've been blessed.
Gosh, well, that's good to know. Encouragement.
Yes, I've been very blessed.
Yeah, get your experience.
Yes, you have to get the experience. You have to do the work.
And you said you specialize more so in the healthcare sector?
Yeah, I spent most of 30 years of my career working in the healthcare sector. That's correct.
And now that you're semi-retired, what do you plan on doing? Or do you think you ever teach, or you want to continue this consulting business, or just do some semi-retired type of work? I will still continue to do consulting, and
I would also continue to look at different business opportunities to hopefully I'll find something that I can get into. Yeah, yeah. But two, I do not plan to go back into a corporate role.
Gotcha. Well, I usually ask people, do they have a mentor or did they have one? But given your wealth of knowledge and expertise and wisdom over the years, have you mentored anyone?
Yes, I have. I have, and I've had some great opportunities. And one of the proudest moments that I had was when I was working for the healthcare system. I told you I worked as a controller and I was promoted to CFO. I had the opportunity to really hire my own staff. So I actually hired African American assistant controller. I hired an African American director of accounting, and I also hired an African American budget director. So I had an all African American management team that I was very proud of, and you know, when we work in the industry, sometimes you know, we know our counterparts, they can hire whoever they want, and there's no second looks. But you know, I was just proud that I was able to hire other African Americans, stand by my hiring decisions, and my team really performed well.
Did they have were they CPAs? Did they already have the CPA credential?
One of the individuals, you know, was a CPA. You know, the other two were not, but they were very extremely hard workers.
Gotcha. Well, as we get ready to conclude and wrap up, please be thinking about some things you'd like to share and advice, and we'll definitely go ahead on the blueprint. But the very reason I do these interviews and seek out African Americans such as yourself who are CPAs is because the statistic of us being less than 1% of the total CPAs in the U.S. is like right now, it's approximately 650,000 CPAs in the United States and approximately maybe 5,000. Like there's no definite numbers like a roundabout. So we think you out there somewhere. So, and that's less than 1%. Why do you think we're so underrepresented? And it hasn't changed and the needle hasn't moved in 50 years.
Well, one, I'm not sure if people view accountants as a glamorous profession. I still think that we have a stigma of being nerds with pocket protectors, and and I think that may have something to do with people going into the accounting profession. But I think what people may fail to realize is that the accountants are the ones who read financial statements and know everything that's going on, you know, about the business. But you know, once African Americans become accountants, it's a cost and time commitment to pass the CPA exam. And I don't know if they always understand the benefit of it, you know, but it's very beneficial because, again, it's very difficult for anyone to overlook your credentials once you have your CPA designation.
True. So what do you think we should do, those of us who are already CPAs or in the Black community, as a support system and safety net? What can we do to increase the pass rates and close this gap?
Well, I think we need to continue to do what you're doing here, is educating young accountants to let them know that there are significant opportunities available in the accounting profession, and they have the ability to grow through the ranks. And as I mentioned before, when you look at accountants, and I said, make sure you learn the business. And the reason why it's important to learn the business, because when you learn the business and you have the financial background, you really are setting yourself up to become the CEO of the organization, because you understand the numbers in the business, and no one can dispute, you know, what your knowledge is.
Got you. And over the years, with your experience and considering where we are in 2020 with racial issues coming to the forefront again, I can imagine you either experienced for yourself or saw people being passed over, the inequities and the racism in the workplace. How did you overcome that?
You really have to be assertive. And yes, I did see a lot of that. And some of the things that you see when you present your ideas are dismissed, and someone can say the exact same thing, and then all of a sudden it's a great idea, and you know, it's like, wow, I just said that, you know, so you know, why is it any different, you know, since it didn't come from me? But don't get deterred from that. You know, still, you know, work hard, you know, gain your knowledge base and be comfortable and confident in your abilities, and eventually those abilities will shine through, and you'll get the opportunities that you deserve. And you know, the other thing is, I know you want to talk about the blueprint a little bit later.
Oh, we can segue into that if that makes sense. So go ahead.
Well, okay, we can segue into it. But one of the things I wanted to say is that what I encourage young people today is be more entrepreneurial. When I started my career, you know, we were told, get your education and get a good job, you know, and
steady income. That's what a good job means. Just steady paycheck, right?
Yeah, get a paycheck and get a paycheck. And I you know, and I remember when I was changing jobs, and I was getting promotions. So whenever I left an organization to go to another organization, it was always a promotion. It was never a lateral move. And I remember my father telling me, it's like, you can't keep a job, you know, so because he had worked for the organization that he worked for, I believe, for 35 years. So in his mind, you know, you got a job, you kept it, and you kept, you know, moving forward from there. But he really did not understand, you know, the concept of, you know, that sometimes you have to change jobs to get a better opportunity.
Right. Well, the moment a lot of us have been waiting for, the blueprint. I'll remind the audience, or anybody who's watching, Adrienne mentioned her father's blueprint. And if you don't know, have to go back and check out her interview. She is a certified public accountant, and I believe her younger brother is on the road to being a CPA as well. I know he's in the accounting profession, following their father's footsteps, and he laid out an outline. He, along with his wife, their parents, had high expectations for him, made some sacrifices, and now they are well on their way to being successful as young adults themselves. So I want to hear all about this blueprint and this outline of being successful.
Okay. Well, you know, in order for you to get a full appreciation of the blueprint, I have to give you some background information. So, you know, I mentioned, you know, I'm from a small town. My grandparents were sharecroppers. My father, he was functionally illiterate. He dropped out of school probably in the second or third grade, you know, because he had to work in the fields. And so, you know, he was able to move from working in the fields to get a manufacturing job. And, you know, my mother, she did graduate from high school, but she had a manufacturing job as well. So, and my father, you know, they both had tremendous work ethics. You know, even though my father was functionally illiterate, but he was also a jack of all trades. You know, he could repair automobiles, he could do small construction, he could do plumbing, he could do electrical work. You know, it's just amazing the knowledge that he had, you know, without having any formal education and having the ability to read and write. You know, and my mom, she worked in a manufacturing plant making blue jeans, actually, and the plant closed while I was in college. And so she studied to become a nursing assistant, you know, so she was able to move into a role of becoming a nursing assistant after working in manufacturing for most of her life. And I say that is because my parents did not have the knowledge to really prepare me for college. So I did not know what I was getting into. My high school did not properly prepare me. And once I got to college, I felt that I was a little bit of a disadvantage because, kids coming from all over the world, came to Howard, and they had, tremendous educational experiences, through high school. So that was a disadvantage. And I felt not as confident, in myself and in my abilities, as a result. And so I mentioned I didn't have great study habits. I graduated with, the bare minimum that I needed to graduate, from Howard. And what I found was that it became difficult to get that first, job opportunity. And really my first job opportunity came through a contact through my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law put me in contact with the daughter of the video chain company, and I was able to obtain my first position as a result of that. And so it just goes to show my entree into the accounting profession was not easy. I went on a lot of job interviews because I didn't have the confidence. I never really had the ability to just nail that interview and to get the positions, a lot of the positions that I applied for. And so all that to say is that I wanted to make sure that my kids did not experience the same experiences that I had trying to get into the profession. So after the fact, I could see that my classmates that were studious, they were getting internships.
Okay.
They got internships. Then they also had job offers their senior year before graduating from college. So they didn't have to pound the pavement, after they graduated from college, in hopes of getting that opportunity. Right. So once I found out that they both had interest in accounting, that's where it was labeled the blueprint. And it's funny that Adrienne would mention it because she hated it every time I brought it up, as we was going through the process.
It's proved to be successful, but go ahead.
But the blueprint was prepare yourself, establish good study habits in high school. And I think they were both fortunate enough to go to high school that provided them with the proper structure where they established those good study habits, which transferred nicely into college. So the plan was have good study habits, major in accounting, seek summer internships, and Howard actually, and they both attended Howard as well. They had a 5-year accounting program, so you had the ability to finish the 5-year program, with your master's, with your MBA. So complete the 5-year program and work for Big Four. And so by accomplishing those things, and I said, and the cherry on the top would be passing the CPA exam. And once you pass that, no one can close the door on your credentials and deny, whether or not you're qualified for a position. Because one of the things, as I've gone through my accounting career in reviewing resumes and you see that people say, oh, this person has, back then it was Big 8 experience, So, you always hear, oh, they got Big 8 experience, that was a plus. Or they had their CPA, So, that those things were pluses, and those were the resumes that floated to the top, where if you did not have, your CPA, you may go into the other pile, So that made it so, so important. And also the blueprint, has a lot to do with my wife because as I mentioned, I had poor study habits, but my wife was very strong academically. She was the valedictorian of her high school class. She went to college on scholarship, and she really helped me stay focused and in achieving, things I've been able to achieve as far as passing the CPA exam and furthering my professional career as well. So the blueprint is really taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. And one of the things that I told them is that if you go to a historically black college and university, is that nowadays a lot of companies are coming to HBCUs, to look for black talent. So sometimes, if you're trying to make a decision, if you have a toss-up between if I want to go to a majority college or to HBCU, keep in mind companies are coming to HBCUs and looking for the best talent, that's available there. And it's so important for you to get good grades, because you're going to position yourself, to get the best opportunities that are available.
Right. And it seems like you led by example.
Well, my struggle was harder, and my hopes is that their struggle will not be as hard. And the other thing, and I encouraged them to major in accounting, but I told them both, major in accounting, but you don't have to be an accountant, for your whole career. And I said that this is just your foundation. Use accounting as your foundation, and you can do whatever you want to do, but at least you have that foundation in place. And what's important about the CPA exam, because once you become a CPA, that will always be well respected, because everyone knows how difficult it is, to accomplish that feat. And they know that it takes a lot of hard work and desire in order to do that.
Well, you spoke on something that I didn't mention or ask earlier. Over the years, do you think the CPA designation has lost any prestige or relevancy, since a lot of people or industries and companies will allow people to move up through the ranks without that CPA designation?
Well, I don't think so, and that might be, my own personal bias, but I know that when I was coming along, it was so important to have your degree, your bachelor's degree. And I know that a lot of people were passed over that did not receive opportunities as a result of not having their degree. So they could work in the accounting profession and learn quite a bit, but their ceiling was always capped. And that really presented, some hardships. And I've seen it a lot personally, even with some close personal friends. One of my best friends, we started off professionally at the same time, and there's just been a big difference between what I've been able to accomplish as a result of having a degree in a CPA, versus what his opportunities have been.
So even today, you think it's still held in the highest regard?
It still is held in high regard, yes.
Oh, well, that's good and encouraging to hear from us still working and those coming into the profession. Go all the way. It'll be well worth it.
Yes, it's well worth it. Even if you don't want to pursue accounting for the rest of your career, it's important to have it, and you'll always know how to read financial statements, and no one can ever try to get over on you, because you're going to know exactly what the numbers say.
That's true. No denying that. And from listening to Adrienne praise you and your wife and her parents and what y'all done for her and her brother in the blueprint she was referring to, I definitely wanted to hear about it. But I took away from that conversation what y'all did as parents and setting the example, provided options for your children.
And that's all we wanted to do. That was the most important thing. We made, sacrifices so that they wouldn't have to go through the things that we experienced. And in some ways, it's a gift and a curse, you know, because, and the reason why I say that is, you know, do you still have that same desire, you know, if you don't have the struggle, and will you be as aggressive, you know, pursuing all of the opportunities available to you? Not saying that they, you know, that they don't or they will not, but, you know, in some regards, you know, their life has been, you know, a lot different and better than what we experienced, and that's
And
what
I
you hope.
applaud you.
That's what you know, my parents, you know, wanted for, you know, me and my sister. You know, we were both able to attend college, and you know, and they just guided us toward college, even though they couldn't prepare us to what to expect once we're in college. But they made sure that we attended college and graduated from college.
Right, and I applaud you and your wife, your entire family for that, because each generation should be better or do better and go further than the previous.
That's what we hope. That's the goal.
Exactly, and it sounds like you achieved the goal. That's why I want to applaud you, because so early, especially as young as Adrian is, y'all did a fantastic job.
Well, I appreciate that, Jacqueline. That's very kind of you.
That is great. So I hope it inspires and encourages anyone else who's hearing that story, because it sounds like you've made a shift, especially in regarding generational wealth and what you can achieve in life.
That's true. And that's one of the things, you know, that we always wanted to show. And I know that Adrian, you know, talked about it a bit in her interview, but it was always important for us to share financial knowledge, you know, with both of them. And we still do today. You know, any good financial article that my wife and I may come across, we make sure we share it with everyone. You know, they share articles with us. And, you know, it's so important, you know, for, you know, our kids to be financially literate, you know, so it's, you know, you need to know those things early on, and so that you're better prepared, you know, to take on life. You know, one of the things, you know, for example, a lot of problems with African Americans getting financing for business opportunities is that they don't have the credit score, you know, necessary, you know, to obtain the financing.
Right.
And it's because, you know, they never really had anyone to tell them it's like how important that score will be when you really want to go out and try to raise, you know, financing to start a business or to create, you know, or buy real estate. Or do different things, and that's one of the things that, you know, we have to do a better job of is making sure our community has better financial literacy and understanding the importance of money and how money, you know, should work for you. And you know, one of the things, you know, I'll mention another point is that, you know, growing up, it was more important to put money into savings accounts. And you know, now the interest rates are so poor that you don't make any money, but you know, we were never encouraged, you know, to put money into the stock market, you know, but that's something that, you know, that we need to be aware of, and that helps, you know, build generational wealth as well, you know, to invest the money, you know, that we make so that we can make sure that we have money, you know, for our future.
Gotcha. Well, before we conclude, I'll let you know 2 last questions and then anything you'd like to share. But
sure.
One of the last questions, what does having CPA behind your name mean to you?
It means respect. It means respect, especially as an African-American male. A lot of times, you know, we don't get the respect that we need. And I don't normally tell anyone I'm a CPA, you know. So mostly if someone asks me what I do, you know, while I was in my profession, when someone asks, so, well, what do you do? I always say, I'm an accountant. Okay. And I wouldn't even say that I'm a chief financial officer, you know, unless I needed to pull out the big guns and say, by the way, I'm a CPA and a CFO.
No, right?
So it gives you a measure of respect, and you shut a lot of people up.
Gotcha. That's it. Nothing else to be said, right? When they see those three letters, right?
You just dropped the mic.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, any lasting advice, thoughts on those who are currently working and trying to navigate the workplace and looking for opportunities to be recognized and respected, and those coming into the accounting profession or even in college thinking, should I even all the way to CPA? Is it worth it? What are your closing?
Well, let me say this, is that I'm learning about millennials.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because what I found, and particularly from my own kids and other millennials, is that they really look for work-life balance. And so, when I first heard that, I was like, what is that? So I'm learning to appreciate that, because, younger people are looking for more. But at the same time, you really have to put the work in. You got to put the work in your career, and, you might have to sacrifice a little bit on your work-life balance, and particularly on your life balance. And so what I say is that put the work in early, and later in life, you're going to have the work-life balance that you need, because, hopefully you're stacking the coins and you can do all of the things that you enjoy. And so put the work in, not only for studying for the CPA exam, but whatever career opportunity that you have, put the work in. If it requires staying late, and today, you don't have to stay late. You can always go home because you can always work virtually and you have access to the internet. You can gain knowledge, outside of your job. Just don't limit your job to the time that you're on the clock. Gain all the knowledge that you can, because again, that's something that no one ever can take away from you.
Right.
And you just want to continue to learn all you can and grind, and the rewards will pay off.
That's true. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Davis, for sharing your experiences and walking us through the blueprint and your knowledge and wisdom. I definitely appreciate it. I applaud you.
You're quite welcome.
And I wish you the best in semi-retirement and down the road with whatever you decide to do. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit with me and tell me all about how you've been so successful.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
And before I conclude, let me mention this before I disconnect. Remember who you are and whose you are, because there's no time like the present.